Hello and welcome to You Are Medicine. I'm your host, Thuy, and I will be talking with Christy Alexander. This show is on spirituality and healing, the spiritual aspect of traditional Chinese medicine, and the profound healing that acupuncture can connect us to. For many people, traditional Chinese medicine, with its roots in ancient metaphysical systems, is a place where they can address issues that are not merely physical. People come to traditional Chinese medicine with ailments and imbalances they describe as mental or emotional or sometimes spiritual. Spirituality means different things to different people. For some people, spirituality references a mental, emotional state of being. For other people, it is associated with morality. And for others, it involves a relationship with a divine creator or some intelligence beyond the human experience. For me, I see everything as spiritual because I understand that every manifestation that exists has an origin and an intelligence that is beyond what we can experience physically and understand intellectually. Having a conscious relationship to that divine origin is central to my life. It is a practice, though, and one that can too easily become obscured by the demands of life and the state of the world. It was during one of these more demanding and spiritually confusing times in my own life when I had an unforgettable acupuncture session with Christy Alexander. Christy reminded me of my own faith and that spiritual healing is the ultimate healing. Christy Alexander took care of my kids when they were babies. The oldest is already in college, so I hadn't heard from Christy in many years. She called me distraught about an ordeal she was going through. She was experiencing discrimination at work and false allegations about child neglect and abuse, and she was trying hard to clear up her name.
I'm a mental health and wellness student, so I was in grad school. And the last job that I had inside of my profession as a registered behavior technician, I had been discriminated and harassed at that job. And this particular manager, clinical director who had harassed me.
Discriminated because you're Black?
Yeah, I think it was multiple things. I think she was discriminating against my race, my color, my personality, like my joy, like all these things.
Discriminating against your joy.
I mean, you know what I mean?
I know.
And it's crazy because
Right.
the way that she continued to harass me. So I left that job in November, and this was now April. All the stuff that they lied about, I had to refute it all in a response. And they were serious because one of them was that I had willfully hurt a child or something. Right. And that's why I'm like, she didn't know me. She had no idea who I was. It was clear whatever hatred she had, she was taking it out on me for some reason. I had no control over how I was being treated and what they were doing to me. And I was so upset. The only way I could have any peace in it was through continued prayer and seeking God through it because I didn't have any other answers.
Right.
And then I remember I came to acupuncture Monday. And then I remember I was feeling so, like I said, I hadn't slept in probably since Thursday at that point. I probably hadn't eaten either, right? And then I remember you were just so concerned. And I remember you were telling me, you need to sleep, Christy, you need to eat. And then I remember I went into the session and it was regular, like I normally would go into the chair. But I just remember I could just feel like all this stuff happening inside of the session that I had never felt before. It was like some sort of chemistry or science was occurring to my body. But my eyes were closed, but I could just sense and feel all this happenings is all I could really say it.
What did it feel like?
It felt like, it's like pulling and pressure, and I could feel my blood moving through my veins, like swimming around. It was weird. And then I felt like sometimes pressure or tension, but no pain. It was never pain. And then I remember I woke up, or you came and tapped me, and I just remember feeling like I was a completely different person. I was totally new.
The effects that Christy described from how she was feeling before and after acupuncture that day, while notable, is not an unusual experience. Acupuncture helps ease stress, even extreme stress, and can help a person return to themselves. We can think of stress as a tension in the body-mind, or as TCM puts it, stagnation. Needles put at strategic points in the body help to move stagnation, and in doing that can restore and balance energy flow. The degree to which a treatment can do that depends upon many factors, including point combination, the state of both patient and practitioner, what other conditions a patient may be dealing with, and even things like time of day or temperature in the room. The understanding that TCM has regarding inseparable connection to everything means that everything plays a role in any outcome. And so treatments can't really be formulaic in nature because we are not static machines in a mechanical world. That Christy spoke directly about spiritual afflictions was somewhat unusual because it is rare for me to be with a person that directly and comfortably places her experience in that realm and has an unabashed direct connection to a divine creator or God. And I am convinced that it is precisely because of this strong spiritual connection that sets us up for what was to happen next.
And then the next day, I didn't come to see you, but I was laying in bed and it was like I could feel an attack coming, and I started to journal about it because I could sense that it was something was happening. And so then I think I texted you and I was like, I need to get back to acupuncture. A few hours later, I found out what the attack was all about. It was like more stuff happening or surrounding this whole ordeal. And so all that stuff was like, I could sense it. So then that Tuesday night, Wednesday is when I woke up, and I felt like even that morning, it was just a different morning. I could hear directions, and I've heard directions before in the spirit, driving to the bay, and I was still like very much in worship. And I felt like I could see the mountains opening up and the water pouring through the mountains in my vision. So I just remember really looking at all of that. And then I remember when I got to the bay, there were kids, and I had randomly ran into some families, and I was talking to their kids, and they ended up being people that knew you. Just everything seemed so directed. You know what I mean? Then I remember we were talking, and then you were like, well, let's get you on the table. And then I remember I was laying there. There was a song that I was trying to hum the whole day, and I just never had time, or I couldn't get any space to hum it. And I just started to hum it, and it took me deeper and deeper. Then I remember you came and you were like, Christy, you need to be quiet. And I was like, quiet? I didn't know what you meant. And I was like, okay. And then you left again. You kind of kept coming in to tell me, like, Christy, you're scaring the other patients.
Because to you, what were you doing? You were just humming?
Well, to me, I remember humming. I went into a spiritual place, but it didn't feel uncomfortable for me because it was a familiar place for me spiritually. But I wasn't aware of, I guess, the outward projection of the place that I was in.
Right. I know you blacked out, but I know, right? I put
The other side.
I put needles in, and I left, and there were noises coming from that room.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember what you were saying, but there was a lot of exclamation.
Really?
Maybe it was very loud praising,
Right.
laughter, crying, lots of emotions, but very loud coming from that room.
I remember you coming in, and I remember telling you to lock the door because I felt like at this point where I was spiritually, something was going to be coming forth. Something was going to come out, but it was not going to be safe for people who weren't covered spiritually. And so I
covered spiritually?
Yeah, like connected spiritually, and
it wouldn't be safe for them.
It wouldn't be safe.
They'd freak out or something.
Or something would come out of me into them that they couldn't control.
Okay.
That's how I was feeling, like something was coming out and it wasn't going to be safe. For me, I was in the spiritual place, so I was protected. But if they weren't in the spiritual place with me, then it could have been more damnation to their spirit or harmful to their spirit, their spiritual person. And then something like took over me. I couldn't breathe. And I could hear something like, you're giving birth. Like that's what it was to me. But I know I had no pain. I know I wasn't pregnant, but it was like in the spirit, I was giving birth to something. So I remember I had to sit up, and I remember I was straddling the table, And then I remember you came in again. And I remember saying, Thuy, hold my hand. Hold my hand, Thuy. You were like, still very perplexed. And you were trying to oblige whatever I was telling you to do, but you clearly were not understanding any of what I was telling you to do or why. And so then I was going to have a baby or I was giving birth or something. You were like, I'll be right back. I have to go check on my patient or something. And I was like, okay, lock. That's when I said, okay, lock the door. So then I was sitting up at that time because I was on this table, was trying to breathe. And it was like something was trying to like take my breath and I'm trying to catch my breath. So this fight was happening. I heard resist, like quit fighting. So I just fell off the table to the ground and I kind of started crawling. And then I remember laying on my back, crying and hurting or something. And then it just changed. I was laughing and I heard get free. And I had all these tissue in my hand from crying, I guess. I remember throwing the tissue and I was just so free. And I was laughing like the most hearty laugh ever. Somebody came in and I remember hearing, Christy, your needles.
I've experienced many things in my 20 plus years doing acupuncture, but nothing quite like what happened that day. Moving and knocking out needles during sessions is not uncommon. People dream and move their arms or scratch their head or sit up or even try to walk with their needles if they have to go to the bathroom. But I've never had someone engage in so much dramatic movement as Christy did with her needles. I knew there was some activity with what I was hearing through the door, but it was an utter surprise to find her as if she were laboring with the needles still in.
So I go there to try to get you to calm down, and you're on the massage table on all fours as if a person were in labor. I've been in labor, so I know. Like you were telling me, but I'm like, you're crazy. Nothing is happening. You were clearly in another world. I think in that moment I was baffled because I didn't know what to do. And also, maybe I can imagine that I wasn't supposed to do anything.
Oh.
Why couldn't I just hang out and let you do whatever you needed to do?
I was like, hold my hand, Thuy. Hold my hand.
Well, another thing that was on my mind was that the second shift was going to happen in an hour. And I think it was heavy on my mind that I had to get things under control. So there were all these things on my mind that I was supposed to do.
Right.
That had nothing to do with the moment and was completely untrusting of the clearly supreme whatever was supposed to happen, but I had to make it right by 3:00. Like it was like really weird, you know? And for some reason that, for me, it was like this back and forth, like, okay, you can do your sacred work, but by 3:00, okay? Right. Okay, God, whatever you need to do. Okay, fine. Okay, but can we be done by 3:00? Right, which didn't make any sense.
Wow.
As a practitioner, being responsible for a patient's well-being and being in control of the situation, which includes time management, is something that occurs automatically for me as soon as I step into clinic. It's habitual, and I generally do it well and rarely have too challenging situations. So I was starting to feel unnerved with all the things running through my mind with Christy's altered state and watching the clock.
That's all I remember. But in my head, the physical presence wasn't physical, it was spiritual. So to me, it felt like whoever was trying to take my breath at that moment prior is now who's trying to hold me. So for me, I was like, no, you can't touch, like, you're not going to touch me. And I could see this brilliant light coming through. And I was like, I could see the light coming this way. And I was trying to get away. And I remember going to this other part of the room and it was hot, like heat, like hell to me is what I felt. And I got to get to the light. That's where I need to go, the light. So I was trying to get to the light. And then I remember again, people pulling on me. And I just remember Chris, my name being called.
You were trying to get away from the heat lamp.
Yes.
There's a heat lamp.
Yes.
That was the fire of hell or something.
It was in my head. And it was 2 rounds in the room that I could go between any of them at that moment.
And then when you started to try to run out of the window,
yes,
that's when I called for Daniel because I thought you were going to break the window and just crash through. Then you wanted to get away from me because you could feel my energy, which was like shutting this God thing down.
Totally.
so you were trying to run away from me because you were trying to get me to pray with you. And
That's right, because I remember now. I said, Thuy, plead the blood of Jesus. And you were like, Christy, I don't believe like you. And I was like, say his name. I need you to say his name. Because I was so concerned, like I said, for what was
because you could feel what was happening with me.
Yeah.
And I was like, plead for the blood of Jesus.
And I was like, just keep saying it. That'll do. Yes.
So then
Lauren.
I was trying to do things half-heartedly, but I was doing it to control you, which you could feel was bullshit. And then you're like, let me get away from this person. Just run to the light. And so when you were going to the window, that's when I called Daniel because I thought you were going to break the window and kill yourself. That's when he came in and then you ran out.
Mm-hmm.
My partner Daniel happened to be driving by the office during that time and called to ask me if I needed anything. Sensing that a situation was starting to escalate, I asked him to stop in just in case. When it seemed to me that Christy might do something to hurt herself, I called Daniel in. Hearing Christy retell the story, I could see how I was escalating the situation with my own fear, and that elements of coercion and control on my part was being played out in a somewhat comical but real way.
And I may have had 1 or 2 patients leaving at the time. But I did something that I normally won't do, is that I'm pretty good at, it'll work out. That's like my superpower. It's fine, it's okay. But the degree to what I was witnessing, what was happening, it flipped that switch of fear inside me where I was like, wait a minute, what am I supposed to do? Because I don't usually encounter things to that degree.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just want you to, like, I had that knee-jerk reaction. I just want to control. I just want you to be quiet.
Right.
Even though I could feel that you were somewhere else, I just wanted you to stop because it just crossed that line for me. And even as I was having that emotion, I was talking to myself. I'm like, I mean, what's going to happen? So, okay, these people are going to think there's a weird patient. It's not a big deal. But it was a big deal when that line gets tripped in you. It doesn't just mean that. It means whatever it means when you flip out. It means you're crazy for supporting a crazy person. It means you're in an unprofessional establishment. You should be calling the real professionals because,
Interesting. The real professionals.
Exactly. And that's who you need to go to, the system.
Right.
When gets real.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
So you were tripping that wire for me.
Once that wire was tripped for me, I was in a more disconnected, less present state of being, and Christy, sensing that, just wanted to get away from me.
And then next thing I know, I heard, open your eyes. And I opened my eyes and the door was open. And I heard, run. And I ran. And then I heard, grab Princess P. I went to the car. I just went out the street to my car and latch her. And I was trying to undo it. And I heard, unlatch her. Don't undo that. Unlatch her. So I just went, chick, and I grabbed her and I just started running with her. It was just so real to me. So
what did this voice sound like? Was it a man's voice, a woman's voice?
It doesn't have a man or a woman's tone because it's an intuition or something. It's like a...
But it seems so clear.
Yeah, it's clear. It's just like I hear it say, go left, go right. I've heard it so many times and it doesn't have like a audible vocalization. It's like direction, but it's coming from inside. So it's not like I hear it in my ears.
But it's as clear as an audio.
Yeah, it's very clear. You know what it's saying. You don't have any doubts about obeying it. So
God leads and talks to you. It's not an unfamiliar thing what happened that day in acupuncture.
Well, it was definitely unfamiliar, but it was familiar at the same time because I can't recall ever being, it was like I was overtaken. And I guess usually I'm in a place where maybe the music is playing or we're already in worship. So the atmosphere is already in praise and worship, but it's never been in a situation where I invoked the spirit myself and brought it to me. You know what I mean?
And you weren't afraid?
No, I wasn't afraid. There was no fear. The fear was of what was trying to suppress what I was trying to release or what was trying to take my breath, because I could feel something trying to take away my breath. Like every time I was trying to get a new breath, it was trying to take it. But then once I heard the surrender, I fell to the ground. And that's when it's like I crawled away from it or something. I mean,
Wait, that was in the clinic or?
in the clinic, yeah. So when I was in the clinic and I was on the table and I couldn't breathe and I could hear it get down, like release, fall. It was like a surrender. It was more of what I was hearing. Surrender to it. Quit trying to fight that you can't breathe. Just surrender to me in it, type of a feeling. And that's when I fell to the ground and then crawling and trying to breathe, and I was crying. Because it was like a warfare. It's hard to describe warfare, but it was all your emotions are invoked during warfare.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Christy's spiritual experience involved difficulty breathing and surrendering. Perhaps the most difficult thing to do when we can't breathe is to surrender, but that was the intensity of the spiritual turmoil she was going through in that moment. The acute, stressful situation that brought her into acupuncture was literally taking her breath away, and she received divine guidance to surrender. It was in those moments that she was battling inside herself, and when I came into the treatment room, still in an altered state, she asked for my help, to pray with her, to hold her hand, to surrender with her. But hypervigilance, rather than surrender, was where I was at when I entered the room, and so I couldn't support her how she wanted, quite the contrary. In retrospect, it made sense that she would want to get away from me.
I was being told right as long as I obeyed right. You know what I mean? I wasn't in danger if I listened to what I was being told to do. That's why when I saw the door open and I heard, run, unlock the door, did it like I could hear the open
But
door.
you had no question to listen to what you were told. There wasn't ever inside you like, maybe I shouldn't listen to this voice.
No, like not at all. Even when I was running down the street, because I was running.
And you're barefoot, by the way.
Barefoot.
Street.
No shoes. I had my baby though. I got my baby.
So then you were gone. I was inside still. But I was still like, what do I do? And then my first thought is, oh, her safety. She's just gone off and she's running in the street. So what do? I guess I call 911.
That's what we would do, yeah.
But that seems so ridiculous.
Well, not in your mind at the time. Like, I feel like at the time you were...
So I called 911, which felt really weird to do.
Yeah, what did you say to them? Now, that's interesting.
Yeah, I said I have a patient, and I think she had some sort of mental break, and I'm afraid she's going to hurt herself, and I think she ran down the street in the traffic. So they got whatever information, but the whole thing felt weird to me. Like, I knew that how I was acting wasn't in alignment. But I didn't have another thing that I knew or that I was taught. I just knew the system's way.
I felt like something was kind of trying to get me
Right.
when I was running. So I didn't want to spend much time, but I knew I heard get Princess P. So I grabbed my baby, right? And then when I had her going down the street, it was again that same turn here. I got down between the fence and a house or whatever, and I just leaned and the door went, and I heard, go through there. And I went through there, go here. And then I ended up in this like grassy, knolly area behind some shed or something, pulling the grass up over me. It was as if I was going to be taken from that moment in the grass at that moment. That's how it felt.
Taken from?
Taken from the earth is what it felt like.
Like you would die.
But not die, just transition. I didn't feel like I was dying.
And it felt good.
I was ready to go. And I kept hearing, your heart's beating too fast. I can't take you if your heart's beating so fast. I could hear that. And then I kept hearing Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. I kept hearing that over and over as I was trying to catch my breath and figure out where I was. And I do not like grass. I hate bugs and dirt. So I'm still perplexed at how I was in the dirt. I don't understand. I am not the one. I have to have a blanket down. I'm always looking for cobwebs. But it was like this is where I'm supposed to be type of place. I'm hiding you here type of a thing. Was holding my dog so tight and she couldn't move. Okay, let me relax. Let me let her relax. So I was just trying to get relaxed in that space that now I was in. And then I feel like I kind of passed out or something.
Did it feel like a long time or a short time?
I felt like I had no sense of time. It didn't feel like hours, but it didn't feel like 5 minutes either. And then I kept hearing, noise, not thinking the noise is pertaining to me though. And I'm just trying to like kind of ask questions within myself. I remember just petting my dog and she finally calmed down and would just stay because I didn't want her to run away,
While Christy was resting in the grassy area with her dog, I was pacing in the clinic back and forth. Daniel had run out after her, and when he turned the corner in pursuit, it was as if she had disappeared into thin air. Perplexed, he walked up and down the street, peering into people's backyards and in alleys, hoping to find Christy there. Christy, through divine guidance, found a little space in between a shed and fence that hid her from sight. Even as Daniel peered in the yard she was laying in, he didn't see her. I was pacing and waiting for updates from Daniel. To me, it felt like she was missing for a very long time, but I think it was only about half an hour. And then I get a phone call that she is found. I rush out to meet her.
And so I go out, and I remember walking, and then I turn the corner, and there are police cars, there are fire trucks, there are these mental health people with clipboards. And I'm like, what the hell?
Wow.
Christy?
Yeah.
This is our world? This is literally how we handle things because we don't understand what's happening?
Yeah.
And how we vilify, because in that moment, you're like the crazy person.
Right. I was like the crazy person in the eyes of everyone but myself.
Right.
Yeah. Because inside of me, I knew I wasn't crazy. I just needed you to stop talking to me, like was my feeling. Or, you know what I mean? It was not anything that they thought I needed. I remember, ma'am, you're not in trouble. I'm not in trouble. Okay. And so then he just kind of like trying to coax me out. And I'm like, okay, I'm coming with you. And I grabbed my dog. So I was like, how do I get out? I remember asking politely because I didn't want anyone to think I was crazy. I remember that because I'm like, the police is here now. The lady was like right through there. I got out and I was just like, but then it felt like my breath was trying to be taken again. It felt like everybody was trying to talk to me like, what's your name? And leave me alone. I just want to breathe. Just leave me alone. Please leave me alone. I'm fine. I know I don't have any shoes on. I'm looking crazy, but I'm fine. I'm fine. And so then I sat on the grass because I just felt like I needed some space. And then another couple of fire people came over, excuse me, we just want to talk. And that's when I remember I heard Thuy. And I was like, Thuy. And then you just appeared.
And then they came to me and they're like, if you want her to come with us, we can detain her. Right. There were these lists of things and I'm like, what kind of crazy world do we live in? These are my options.
Right.
And I was
and how would they have helped is what I'm concerned about, And
I was like, no. And then from across the way, I saw you and we locked eyes. And that's when I told you, I don't want you to go with them.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, let's go. That's when I was feeling the most unsafe is when all those people were trying to ask me questions and I don't feel safe telling you anything about me. I'm okay. I'm fine. Like you're the one with the problems, how I felt. But during the experience, I didn't feel unsafe. No.
It's ironic that when the system provides for our safety is when Christy felt most unsafe. And also that when I was worried about her safety in the clinic, she also felt unsafe about the way I was behaving and ran out of the clinic. And when she felt unsafe, she couldn't breathe. And that she felt the most safe in her spiritual experience in communing with God and surrendering. That she wasn't allowed to surrender must have been so frustrating to her, and moreover, because it was in the name of safety.
And then there was fire trucks, and I was just like, oh my God, what's going on? You seemed like so happy to see me, and I was so happy to see you, and you were like, Christy, I don't want you to go with those people. I was like, I don't want to go with those people. Thuy, let's go. Where are we going? I don't know. Like, let's go.
And I remember in that moment making the decision and going, that's crazy world. Okay, God, I get it. That is not anything I want to be a part of. And literally, we walked, we turned the corner, and I couldn't see them at all. It was right at the corner, and it was just me and you, just chatting it up.
Yeah.
You're telling me that you actually don't like bugs, and you don't know how you ended up there. It was just normal and peace after that, and just like two friends helping each other.
Christy and I spent a bit of time processing what had happened immediately after, and we stayed in touch somewhat after that day, but a lot was happening in our lives, including a move for Christy, so we didn't have an opportunity for an in-depth sit-down reflection, not until this interview. Because of the intensity of what happened and my focused concern for Christy that day, I never really had the opportunity to clue Christy into all that was going on for me around the time of the incident, and the degree to which what had transpired brought me clarity, understanding, and renewed faith in the direction I was going in. It was a revelation for us both as I told her about the parallels between what she was dealing with and what I was confronting in my life at the time. In Christy's case, it was a horrifying and acute case of blatant racial discrimination. In my case, I was confronting an ongoing, unsettling, and systemic form of white supremacy.
So that year for me, it was a year of opening my eyes to the fact that I was still in the system. I think for me, it was discovering white supremacy.
Wow.
If you want to call it that.
Right.
I mean, the Bay Area would never... Right. White people in the Bay Area think they're above it all because they're liberals. They're not like the Southern whites, right?
Right, totally, totally.
But for me to discover that the people that I was associated with had that same mentality. It's just covered in all this niceness.
Yeah.
And it had a few things happen to me that year in my close inner circle where I was like, what? And the thing is, like, when it happens to you, you're also being conditioned to gaslight yourself, to question yourself when something bad happens.
Yes.
To be like, oh, this is my own insecurity, you know?
Yeah.
But I was sort of coming out of that and kind of reckoning with it. So I was in that place when you called. It was also reckoning with the tentacles of those systems inside me. Like, in what ways am I still trying to fit into that system? All the tentacles of the system in terms of like the definition of what is safe and what is right. I mean, even in my profession, I was trained to think that way. I was trained to think about what is proper, what is right, what is normal, what is healthy.
Oh boy, I see where you're going now.
And when I started questioning that one thing around race, all of the stuff associated with the white system of thinking came up to question.
For sure.
Safety, right, you know.
It was an emotionally difficult and intense time in my life to really sit with the meaning of white supremacy beyond what we were seeing in the media, and not seeing it merely as violent, ignorant white people committing blatant acts of racism, but seeing it as a virus that infects the very foundations of our system and our thinking, that we are not even aware of our biases, fears, and attitudes that stem from it. And in that, I began to locate white supremacy, not just in selected white bodies of people, but anywhere and everywhere that way of thinking survives, even in myself.
I think that there is something about the whole belief system is meant to keep them safe.
Right?
In medicine, in law, in everything, it's meant to keep them safe.
Right.
And then we learn how to uphold that system so that we can be recognized if we do the nice, safe thing that's going to keep them always safe.
Right.
But if we do something wrong, then it messes with the whole system. So I was in the middle of like questioning all the ways that I was brainwashed or that I was taught to understand medicine. Even studying alternative medicine, it's done in a Western way where it's a very spiritual, nature-based, spirit-based medicine, but you're taught in a prescriptive way, like Western medicine.
Right.
You're not taught the root of it because they don't even understand the root of it.
No.
How are they going to teach it to you?
Exactly.
So
very good.
It was like an evolving moment because it wasn't like that sudden moment I had, but it was like I was already working on projects with Indigenous people. I was already sort of thinking around it, but it was really hard for me to confront it in my close group of people where I didn't want to do that. It would threaten everything. And so it was more that I was aware of all these things, but to really like acknowledge it, and that was really hard.
Wow. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, it was a lot. And then not just to acknowledge it in them, but then to acknowledge it in me, like what parts of me are still untrusting, is still taught to think a certain way to maintain law and order so that they can stay safe.
Right.
And then myself by proxy can stay safe.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's when you came in.
I was like, crash. I had no idea.
It's one thing to reflect on systems like white supremacy, capitalism, and patriarchy and its effects on society as if one is outside of it or ironically superior to it. And it's another to watch it reflexively operate through you when things come to a boiling point. That day was a very humbling experience for me as I watched myself feel helpless and out of control, and in that moment watch myself take a back seat to systems that I resorted to take control. But was control what was being called forth? Is control the same as safety? And is safety the same as healing?
I can see now how that day changed a lot.
So I was in the process of really stepping into myself and getting ready to let go of what I needed to let go of. Not just people, but my allegiance to that system of thinking that is very man-based. Even when you're talking about a system like acupuncture that is spirit, that is nature, that is beyond what you can comprehend.
Yeah.
The instinct is to take control of it. That's what white people do. You know?
Yes.
Take control of it and then be the master of it and then teach other people what they don't even understand.
Yeah, you're right. That's very much the mentality. It's almost like ingrained for some reason in that white supremacist type of mind thinking and pattern of ways that are governing this entire world. And
at the time, I was also reframing white supremacy in a way that I could understand, and that I started to see it not as a supremacy, but as a poverty. That in the way that they do it in upholding themselves, their capacity as the limit, they're so impoverished by the world.
That is
beyond it.
Yes, that's exactly what the Bible says. Don't you know that you're poor and broken and that you have nothing? You think you have everything, you have nothing.
I start to think about the way in our poverty that we navigate the world in such control and like, oh, I have to figure this thing out and do this thing this way because this is the best way it can be done. And how limiting that is to the ways of God, like you were saying, like, who can imagine?
Who can? Right. Our minds, our ways are not his ways. We could think all day and never come up with it. It was not for us to even fathom it. It's so outside of us.
Yes.
It has to be dropped in.
Yes.
Interesting.
When I first heard from you and I heard you, I was like the way I was trained. Oh, mania, pharmacy. This is what's happening. This is what she needs to do. And even my counsel of you, it was heavily influenced by that. And there was some part of me that was still like, there's something more. What's going on?
Interesting.
Even though I knew I wanted you to take care of yourself, I felt that there was something beyond what I could understand.
The training to control contradicts the surrender necessary to go beyond what it is that we think we understand. And perhaps that beyond is where spirituality begins, where the realm outside of our control, intellectual, and quite limited human capacities begin. What world lies outside of that? Where was the voice that was directing Christy coming from? What or who has the capacity to orchestrate life in the way it unfolds? If we can surrender our usual narrow and limited narrative, interpretation, and control of life, we might be surprised by what lies beyond.
God's timing is different from the world's timing. And so he'll reveal things through the spirit that when you learn them, it may not feel like, wow, how did I not know this before? But it's like, that was the time for you to learn that in the spirit. So I just think it's more so a part of the way God wants to commune with me. So that's how he does it with me. Because he knows I'm looking, I'm listening, I'm open.
That's the thing. I think he's not communing with most people because most people aren't listening.
That's interesting.
Or don't believe.
Or maybe don't believe. That's what my dad and I got to the bottom of it is. It's lack of belief. I think a lot of people don't believe. No matter what they've been taught, no matter what they grew up learning, I mean, you really have to have this true, innocent, I believe, and just faith and just trust. And I think when you open the door to that, can expose himself. He can operate in that.
Yeah.
And I feel like I already, like the birds, the trees, the ocean, like all these things to me are so profound and there's no way man created them. So for a long time, like I remember as a kid just looking up, watching the clouds, like, what are those? Who created that? You know?
Yeah.
So I've been asking these questions a long time because I'm very inquisitive as it is. No one really has the answers for me but God. So if he didn't answer me, a lot of people would never. They don't ever have the answers. So they come through all these different avenues, but I've asked for them most of the time first. I've been seeking. I'm always trying to seek and learn, and I like to understand.
I think I really loved when you were talking about the simple things, like seeing the flower or the sunset or something, and knowing that there's something greater. That's what Chinese medicine is about, the observation of nature and the power behind nature, and the knowing that we are also part of nature. Right. So the power behind us. And not just the individual power, but because we are part of nature, how in synchronicity we are affected by each other and by nature.
Very much so.
So it's both you're a small part that has to be in concert with everything, and also the power within your small part.
Right.
All at once.
Yep.
And, I think that in terms of medicine, it typically doesn't go behind the question of, so who is behind that larger power of nature? Acupuncture, in its essence, is dealing with the invisible. You're talking about energy, qi, which you cannot see.
Yeah.
And Western medicine is all about what's material, like we're mechanical beings. With acupuncture, you're talking about the invisible.
Yeah.
And I think that on that realm, there's so much mystery and miracles and possibility that people have no idea.
Right.
No idea. And you have to be open to it.
Yeah.
And so people come in, and because they're not at all, they experience some limitation of the acupuncture because it's like not even possible.
Right.
But for those who are open to the possibility. So I myself knew the possibility, but I had never experienced it so directly.
It was precisely because I hadn't experienced it so directly that what transpired with Christy took me by surprise and left me disoriented about what to do. All I knew how to do was to go through the motions of what I was trained to do in scary emergency situations. But even as I was doing it, I knew it wasn't the answer. But then again, maybe it was the answer to the questions that were boiling over in my own mind over the past year during COVID, about our systems not just being impoverished and severely limited in supporting health and healing of physical and social disease, but perhaps by their very nature were causing disease through fear and control. After we turned that corner, I couldn't help but think about all the possible tragic outcomes that could have happened because I made that call. Possible because we've been witnessing such things with far too much regularity with our own eyes through the media.
Police officers didn't know what to do. They just kept trying to do their job. Like, what's your name? We want to keep you safe. What's your name?
And by the way, those police officers, I think, were the better ones. I don't know what the would have happened if we got some rotten apples, which they're there.
Right. Because they didn't they respected my wishes. Like when I was saying, please don't touch me, I just need air. They backed up. They gave me space. No one put their hands on me. They all respected that I was okay, and I just wanted some space. And then when I remember sitting on the ground, just trying to breathe again, I could hear the protocol coming out of them just trying to do their job. That's why I was like, I don't need you to do your job. I just need the air, the breeze. I'm in Berkeley. Let me just have this peace and this space with Earth right now. That was going to be more beneficial to me than anything that they could say.
And I thought about that too. If it went south and I made that call, because during that time, all kinds of really horrible was happening with the cops.
Yeah, it was.
But like, this is the options we have when something like this happens.
Right. There's literally nothing to satisfy what's occurring in the spiritual realm that's inside of the confines of society.
Yeah, they don't understand it at all.
They don't. I don't feel upset or angry that you were concerned about me enough to call 911. You were concerned. I'm running down the street with no shoes on. So that's alarming, period. I think you did the right thing. And I think we both learned. I do, Thuy. I totally do.
Well, yeah. We do the right thing when we learn from it.
Okay. That's true. We definitely learned.
Right?
Yeah. We did. Well, no, because let's just say that I went with them. We would have learned the wrong way too. We could have learned that didn't help me and it created more bad than good.
The distinction between different worlds was apparent that day, as Christy was having a spiritual experience that was difficult to interpret positively from a secular space, and vice versa. It was interesting to me that Christy was just as concerned for my well-being as I was for her during that time. And at the most difficult moments, we were in completely different worlds. Her slipping through a portal in a field where no one could locate her, and me pacing back and forth in the clinic. And the best times when we both decided to turn the corner, connected and trusting in our friendship.
I had been going to acupuncture multiple times before, and I'd had experiences of feeling well and doing better and healing through acupuncture. But that day, it was as if we tapped into a place of truth, of peace, of love that we'd never been to before.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it was like a spectrum of seeing things. It wasn't just one thing, like a variety of things that came forth from that experience. And then it was God. That's the other thing. Like,
well, who could have orchestrated something
yeah,
that you're asking and my asking, and what you had to offer and what I had to offer would fit so perfectly for the benefit of both of us.
Yeah.
Not to mention whoever was there. I don't know what the social workers witnessed and could feel. I don't know what the cop or the firefighter,
Yeah. Or that man on the street. Like, I mean, I definitely benefited from it. It was not just about the people around. It took me to a new level. It showed me the trueness of the God I've been serving my whole life.
Loves Jesus, my soul. Loves Jesus, bless his name.
Aside from church, have you ever had experience like that? That from that day? Where you kind of left yourself like that?
No, not outside of being at church or just at home by myself. I've never been in a public place and had that kind of experience. I mean, even though I was private, I felt like I was in my own private place. It didn't feel like the public, but apparently I was in the public. You know what I mean? It felt very private and very intimate to me. I was having my own encounter, and I've never had an encounter quite like that. I never have. I mean, I felt an out-of-body spiritual experience, but it's always been involved with praise and worship. This was more of just like an everyday outing that became spiritual, So that was supernatural to me. I have never had that kind of an experience outside of the confines of where it's considered acceptable. And I never thought in my mind that there was an acceptable or unacceptable place for that type of experience either until that time.
I think for the people that accepted it, it was a blessing. And for the people that didn't accept it, it supported this other system that keeps us in a state of perpetual fear.
Mm.
You know? So it's not whether what you did was acceptable or not. It was a blessing.
Yeah.
And how do we receive that blessing?
How do we receive that blessing?
The blessing that I received that day continues to teach and inform me in everything I do. And while that incident was rather dramatic in nature, one of the most lasting things that I learned was the power of what I choose, the worlds that I create when I choose to see things in one way or in the other. The decision to make a call to 911 based on fear created a world of emergencies where none actually existed. Perhaps at some point it could have escalated to that point, but I'm so glad I decided differently and was able to turn that corner. And I go back in time and realize that the call wasn't really the defining moment. It was before that, when I decided that Christy's behavior during treatment was something to be controlled and feared, but in truth, it was just new and unfamiliar. I didn't quite know how to take the ecstasy and exuberance with which she presented and her unabashed connection and trust in who she knows as her God. Her altered state, which not only included high emotion and praise, but speaking in tongues and the use of Christian language, triggered me. I was raised Catholic, but I did not have a positive experience with that type of religious upbringing because of the hypocrisy that I observed, and also because I was taught in such a way that just didn't feel good. It filled me with guilt and fear. So by the time I was a teenager, I considered it null and void. Without being fully conscious of it, I associated all of religious Christianity with it, and to put simply, decided it was all stupid. Learning about colonization associated with Christian missionaries and sexual abuse in the church and war and the control of women's bodies in the name of Christianity did not help my evaluation. And still, a lot of life has passed since I was a teenager, and some wisdom to understand that people's twisted interpretation of anything, including God, is not that thing, but just an interpretation, often done for their own personal gain, and it's anything but godly. And yet, even with that understanding, I personally shied away from what I considered monotheistic understanding of spirituality, because I was sufficiently brainwashed where it was hard for me to hear the word God without thinking of an old white man with a long beard casting people into hell. All this is to say that when Christy was going through her experience, a lot of things were triggered inside me that actually had nothing to do with what Christy was going through, but about my own past. And I resorted to doing the thing I do when I'm afraid. I resorted to my mind because that's where I can control things. And control is very aggressive because actually, the only things we can control are things on the physical and material realm. We can control a person's body, detain them, try to make them act a certain way through threats and consequences or drugs. We can try to control how a person presents, what they say, how they dress by the same means. We can try to manipulate what a person thinks or feels, but when we start getting to the less tangible realm of thought and emotion, tactics of manipulations is employed, but actual control starts to lose its grip. The more subtle and invisible, the less we can exert control. And perhaps that is why many of us shy away from or disconnect from a truly spiritual life. It's too scary to venture into areas that are beyond our capacity to control, to surrender to and trust something unknowable. Yet, if there's ever been a period that's demonstrated the limitations of the human capacity to control, it's been these past years with COVID, continued environmental degradation, continued racism, murder, and mistreatment of people of color, war, and everything that feels like it's the worst of humanity is just intensifying. And perhaps this period of great intensity is necessary for us to surrender, if not willingly, then through utter fatigue. Christy shared with me that the state of receptivity and openness she was in when she came into acupuncture was due to an unprecedented state of stress and spiritual turmoil she was feeling. Fortunately, she had her faith and she turned to God. And God responded in such a way that wasn't just for her growth and well-being, but also for mine. I am grateful that I was open enough to receive both the teaching and the blessing. And I think, what about those who can sense the limitations of the human mind, but don't feel like they have a strong spiritual connection? How will they connect or be directed? And this takes us full circle back to the beginning, where I asserted that spirituality means different things for different people. For some, it can be as simple as a mental, emotional state of being. And if that is you, then I would say, please trust what you think and what you feel. It is leading you towards what you want to know. Don't gaslight yourself. For others, it can be about morality. And if that's true for you, then I would say, listen to your conscience and follow it for peace. And still others, it has to do directly with their relationship to a supreme being. And if that's true for you, as it is for Christy, then you probably don't need any direction from me because you know where to receive your direction from. And in my case, I trust it all, and that's why I do what I do, and what led to the creation of this program. Everything is offered to all of us for clarity, for learning, for healing, even our mistakes, our fears, our pain, our disconnect. And once we learn from it, we can practice and live into it, and we can extend it to others. And in doing so, another world can be revealed. And that is truly what healing and spirituality is about. A big thank you to Christy Alexander for sharing her story and her song. Thank you, Daniel Burgess, my engineer maestro. And infinite gratitude goes to the infinite creator, God, Goddess, Mother of all knowing, all loving. May we learn, may we trust, may we heal. May we know in our hearts that we are as you are, all love. And may peace prevail. Amen and hallelujah. And thank you for listening to You Are Medicine. If the Spirit moves you, please share this program with your friends and family and visit bcaclinic.com/You Are Medicine for more information. Stay tuned for new shows every month.